Before this story unfolds, pause for a moment and type in the comments where you are watching from, then subscribe, because what happens next connects people across borders in unexpected ways. The clip aired live, unfiltered, and irreversible, the kind of moment television producers dread and audiences replay endlessly. Rajiv Malhotra had built his career on sharp wit and faster sarcasm, celebrated for saying what others avoided. That night, confidence tipped into carelessness. While discussing global outsourcing, Rajiv laughed, mimicking what he called Filipino English, stretching vowels for amusement. The studio chuckled, social media ignited, and within minutes the broadcast escaped control. Rajiv believed it was harmless humor, a cultural aside, nothing more. He had mocked accents before and survived intact. What he did not understand was how deeply language connects to dignity, labor, and survival. Calls flooded the network immediately, some angry, some disappointed, many quietly hurt. Rajiv dismissed it as overreaction, convinced outrage would fade by morning. Yet unseen forces were already moving. The words he treated lightly had reached millions who carried headsets through night shifts, who spoke gently to strangers under pressure, who learned empathy as a skill. Rajiv slept comfortably, unaware that the lesson approaching him would dismantle certainty he never questioned, and reshape how he understood respect forever. By sunrise, Rajiv's name trended across continents, not for insight but insult. Executives demanded explanations, advertisers requested distance, and the network's silence felt louder than condemnation. Rajiv opened his phone, irritation outweighing concern, scrolling past criticism until one message stopped him cold. It was brief, written plainly, signed by someone named Miguel Santos, a customer service trainer based in Manila. Miguel did not accuse or threaten. He simply invited Rajiv to spend 1 week learning how Filipino customer care professionals were trained, suggesting experience would speak louder than argument. Rajiv scoffed initially, but pressure tightened quickly. The network framed the visit as cultural exchange, damage control disguised as learning. Rajiv agreed publicly while privately planning to endure it, not absorb it. He arrived believing accents mattered more than intention, that fluency equaled authority. Manila greeted him with warmth he found disarming.
No proutescuativ, no confrontastion.
Instead, he was ushered into classrooms filled with young professionals rehearsing patience, clarity, and restraint. Rajiv watched them practice apologizing for problems they did not create, measured not by truth but satisfaction. He still believed he was above this world, yet cracks formed quietly. Something about their discipline unsettled him. No one mocked him back. No one raised voices. They simply worked and waited, as if certain time would teach what words could not. The first training session forced Rajiv into silence. Trainees listened to recordings of furious customers, pausing after each outburst to identify emotion rather than blame. Miguel explained nothing directly, allowing patterns to reveal themselves. Rajiv expected scripts and rigid phrasing. Instead, he saw adaptability taught like muscle memory. Each trainee learned to mirror concern without surrendering control. Rajiv noticed how English here carried softness without weakness, clarity without arrogance. During a break, he asked one trainee, Ana Reyes, why she chose this profession. Ana smiled and said it chose her family first. Her income paid for sibling schooling and hospital bills. She spoke calmly, without appeal for sympathy. Rajiv nodded politely, yet her composure lingered. Later, Miguel handed Rajiv a headset, insisting observation alone was insufficient. Rajiv resisted, but cameras waited. He took calls reluctantly, unprepared for the vulnerability on the other end. A caller sobbed over a cancelled flight, stranded far from home. Rajiv fumbled responses, offering solutions without empathy. The call escalated. Miguel intervened gently, resolving it within minutes. Rajiv removed the headset, unsettled. For the first time, intelligence felt inadequate. Wit felt useless. He had mocked pronunciation, but never understood purpose. These voices carried trust across oceans. Rajiv realized fluency was not dominance, it was service. And service demanded humility he had never practiced. That evening, Rajiv reviewed footage from the live broadcast, watching himself laugh while others sat quietly. The contrast stung more sharply than public criticism. He recalled Miguel's restraint, Anna's steadiness, the trainees' patience under verbal assault. None of them raised their voices, yet they controlled outcomes. The next day, Rajiv attended escalation drills, simulations where agents absorbed anger without deflecting responsibility. Mistakes were treated as learning tools, not failures. Rajiv struggled. His instinct was to assert authority, correct customers, dominate conversations. Each time he did, satisfaction scores dropped. The metrics were unforgiving. Miguel never scolded him. Instead, he asked Rajiv to listen again, to hear what customers asked beneath complaints. Slowly, Rajiv noticed patterns. People wanted acknowledgement before answers. Respect before resolution. Filipino agents delivered this instinctively, trained through repetition and cultural reinforcement. Rajiv felt exposed. The accent he mocked was irrelevant. Effectiveness lived in tone, timing, and emotional intelligence. Midweek, Rajiv received an email from his network urging progress. He felt embarrassment, not resentment. That night, he recorded a private message, rehearsing an apology, unable to send it yet. Pride lingered stubbornly. But certainty was gone. In its place grew an unfamiliar awareness. Leadership without empathy collapses quickly. The voices he dismissed carried global trust. And trust, he learned, was the hardest currency to earn. On the fourth day, Miguel introduced Rajiv to historical context he never studied. The Philippines' call center dominance was not accidental. It grew from colonial language shifts, education reforms, and emotional labor valued globally yet underpaid locally. Rajiv listened, realizing how casually he dismissed layered history with a joke. Agents trained not just in language, but in cultural calibration, adjusting speech for Americans, Europeans, Australians, without losing warmth. Rajiv attempted another call, this time applying what he observed. He acknowledged frustration before offering solutions. The caller softened. The issue resolved. Satisfaction score improved. The result surprised him more than applause ever did. Later, Anna shared her experience handling a grieving customer whose package arrived late for a funeral. She stayed on the line beyond protocol, breaking rules to remain human. Management supported her decision. Rajiv compared this to his studio, where speed mattered more than care. That contrast weighed heavily. He began drafting a public response, deleting drafts repeatedly. Nothing felt sufficient. Words once came easily. Now they felt fragile. That night, Rajiv walked alone, replaying laughter from the broadcast. It sounded cruel in hindsight, detached from consequence. He understood now that English was not owned, it was shared. And those who wielded it gently held more power than those who shouted confidently. Paragraph 6. The final training day arrived quietly, without ceremony. Rajiv completed his last shift alongside Miguel, handling complex calls independently. His performance was competent, but more importantly, sincere. Afterward, Miguel thanked him without praise, simply acknowledging effort. Rajiv asked why Miguel reached out instead of condemning him publicly. Miguel replied that humiliation teaches defensiveness, while experience teaches understanding. That sentence stayed with Rajiv. Back home, the network prepared a live segment addressing the controversy. Rajiv insisted on unscripted time. Executives hesitated but agreed. When the cameras rolled, Rajiv spoke slowly, deliberately. He explained what he learned, naming Anna and Miguel, describing training methods and emotional discipline. He apologized without qualifiers, without humor. Viewers noticed the difference immediately. Messages flooded in again, but this time, many expressed relief. Filipino professionals shared stories, not anger. Rajiv listened. He no longer interrupted. Weeks later, Rajiv proposed a recurring segment highlighting unseen global professions. Ratings rose unexpectedly. His tone shifted permanently. He stopped mocking accents, started asking questions. Privately, Rajiv kept Miguel's message saved, a reminder of restraint over reaction. The moment that threatened his career reshaped it instead. He learned that leadership begins where ego ends, and respect is demonstrated, not declared. The English he once ridiculed taught him his most important lesson: communication succeeds when dignity remains intact. Public reaction did not fade with the apology, it deepened. Rajiv received letters from customer service workers across Asia, Africa, and Eastern Europe, describing nights spent absorbing frustration politely, hiding exhaustion behind courtesy. These stories unsettled him more than outrage ever could. He began reading them obsessively, recognizing patterns of invisibility. Many wrote that English was never their first language, but empathy became their strongest one. Rajiv reflected on how fluency once defined intelligence in his worldview. Now it felt shallow. The more he learned, the clearer it became that customer care was not passive labor but emotional strategy executed under pressure. Rajiv requested internal data from global firms, discovering Filipino satisfaction ratings consistently outperformed competitors. This was not coincidence. It was cultivated behavior reinforced through values and repetition. Rajiv reached out to Anna again, asking what sustained her patience. She replied simply that respect was her shield. That phrase lingered. Rajiv noticed his own temperament changing during debates, choosing listening over dominance. Colleagues commented on his restraint. Privately, he felt lighter, less defensive. The mockery incident remained painful, but it now served as reference, not shame. Rajiv realized that humiliation exposed ignorance, but reflection created growth. His platform expanded, yet his voice softened. Viewers responded not to authority, but authenticity. He learned that influence multiplied when ego diminished. And quietly, the lesson continued unfolding. As months passed, Rajiv proposed a documentary segment focused entirely on global customer service economies. Executives approved cautiously, uncertain about audience interest. Rajiv insisted the story was universal, because everyone had been helped by a voice they never saw. He interviewed trainers, analysts, and workers anonymously, allowing stories to stand without embellishment. One call center manager described resilience as a measurable skill, trained daily like endurance. Rajiv compared this discipline to journalism, realizing similarities he once overlooked. Deadlines, pressure, accountability, all existed on both sides. During editing, Rajiv removed his own commentary repeatedly, letting others speak. The restraint felt unnatural initially, but effective. Ratings surpassed expectations. Viewers expressed gratitude for recognition of unseen labor. Rajiv received a message from his former critic panelist, admitting reconsideration. That acknowledgement mattered less than internal alignment. Rajiv understood now that mockery often masks insecurity. The night of the broadcast, he had sought laughter to reinforce authority. Now he sought understanding to earn trust. The shift was irreversible. When asked during an interview whether he regretted the incident, Rajiv answered carefully. "Regret," he said, "implies distance. Responsibility implies continuity." He carried the lesson forward, intentionally. English was no longer a tool for dominance. It was a bridge requiring care. And bridges, he learned, collapse when mocked. Rajiv's transformation did not erase skepticism. Critics questioned sincerity, suggesting rebranding rather than reform. Rajiv accepted scrutiny without rebuttal. He believed credibility rebuilt through consistency, not defense. Over time, his programming reflected this philosophy. He invited experts previously ignored, prioritized listening, and challenged peers when jokes crossed into degradation. Some resisted, accusing him of abandoning sharpness. Rajiv countered that sharpness without conscience corrodes credibility. Privately, he struggled with guilt, replaying the initial laughter repeatedly. Miguel advised him that guilt was useful only when it informed behavior. That advice grounded him. Rajiv began mentoring younger presenters, sharing his experience candidly, without sanitization. He emphasized that microphones amplify ignorance faster than wisdom. One trainee later avoided a similar mistake live, citing Rajiv's warning. That moment mattered deeply. Meanwhile, Anna advanced to a supervisory role, managing new recruits. Rajiv attended her virtual promotion ceremony quietly, unannounced. Watching her speak, he noticed the same calm authority that once humbled him. He realized respect radiates naturally when cultivated. Years later, the clip still circulated online, often stripped of context. Rajiv no longer flinched. He addressed it openly when asked, acknowledging harm without defensiveness. That transparency strengthened his reputation more than denial ever could. The incident became a case study, not a scar. And for Rajiv, the most profound lesson remained unchanged. Intelligence impresses briefly, but empathy sustains influence. The network eventually institutionalized cultural sensitivity training, using Rajiv's experience as foundation. Rajiv participated without privilege, seated among new hires, absorbing rather than instructing. The sessions emphasized listening across difference, particularly in language perception. Rajiv contributed insights cautiously, mindful not to dominate. He understood now that progress required patience. International partnerships expanded, and Filipino consultants were invited not as tokens, but strategists. Rajiv noticed shifts in internal dialogue, jokes replaced with curiosity. Change moved slowly, but it moved. One evening, Rajiv received a call routed mistakenly to his phone during testing. A distressed traveler sought help. Rajiv stayed on the line, resolving nothing technical, but calming everything emotional. Afterward, he sat silently, realizing how transformative that exchange felt. He had not spoken much. Yet the impact was real. Rajiv reflected on how millions did this daily, without recognition. That realization fueled advocacy, not performative praise. He discouraged labeling Filipinos as naturally suited for service, reframing excellence as trained, learned, and earned. This distinction mattered. It honored effort rather than stereotype. Rajiv's career stabilized into something quieter but deeper. He no longer chased applause. He measured success by trust. When asked what changed him most, Rajiv cited silence, the kind that listens without waiting to respond. That silence taught him more than language ever did. Years later, Rajiv returned to Manila privately, without cameras or announcements. He visited the same training center, now expanded, bustling with new recruits. Miguel greeted him warmly, unchanged in demeanor. Rajiv observed classes again, noticing subtleties he previously missed. Trainers corrected tone gently, reinforcing patience as discipline, not personality. Rajiv sat beside trainees, taking notes without intention to publish. During a break, a young recruit recognized him, hesitating before speaking. Rajiv thanked her for her work instead of explaining himself. The exchange was brief, respectful. Rajiv understood that closure did not require grand gestures. That evening, he joined Miguel for dinner, discussing families, aging, uncertainty. No lessons were exchanged explicitly. Yet Rajiv felt anchored. On departure, Miguel said nothing profound, only wishing him steadiness. Back home, Rajiv continued his work, mindful of language choices. He noticed subtle shifts in public discourse, fewer jokes, more awareness. Perhaps coincidence, perhaps momentum. Rajiv stopped tracking credit. He believed responsibility extended beyond acknowledgement into behavior. The original broadcast faded from headlines, but its influence lingered quietly. Rajiv remained vigilant, correcting himself often. He accepted imperfection as ongoing effort. In that acceptance, he found integrity. The lesson endured not as memory, but as practice. Rajiv eventually wrote a personal essay, not for publication, but for clarity. He examined why accents triggered judgment, tracing roots to hierarchy and colonial residue. Writing revealed biases he never consciously held yet practiced unconsciously. He recognized how media rewarded mockery as relatability. That realization disturbed him. Rajiv shared the essay privately with colleagues, sparking uncomfortable conversations. Some resisted, others reflected. The dialogue mattered more than consensus. Rajiv understood now that progress thrives in discomfort. He continued amplifying voices previously reduced to punchlines, inviting linguists and sociologists to contextualize language diversity. Viewers responded with curiosity rather than defensiveness. That shift encouraged him. Rajiv received occasional backlash accusing him of overcorrection. He accepted it calmly. He preferred criticism for care over praise for cruelty. Anna sent a message congratulating him on a recent segment. Rajiv replied with gratitude, not validation. Their relationship remained professional, respectful, bounded. He did not seek absolution from individuals. He sought alignment in action. Over time, Rajiv's audience matured alongside him. Engagement became deeper, less reactive. He noticed younger viewers referencing empathy as strength, not weakness. That evolution felt meaningful. Rajiv reflected that one careless moment forced him into introspection he avoided for decades. Without it, comfort would have prevailed. Growth required disruption. He carried that truth quietly, mindful of how easily microphones magnify harm and how deliberately they must be used to heal. As Rajiv aged into seniority, his role shifted from voice to guide. He trained upcoming presenters to question humor that relied on belittlement. He encouraged curiosity over cleverness, listening over interruption. Some resisted initially, fearing loss of edge. Rajiv reminded them that relevance depended on trust, not provocation. He shared his story selectively, not as cautionary tale, but as evidence of adaptability. The industry evolved gradually, reflecting broader cultural shifts. Rajiv observed more multilingual representation on air, accents normalized rather than highlighted. Progress remained uneven, but direction felt correct. Privately, Rajiv maintained correspondence with Miguel occasionally, exchanging brief updates. They never discussed the incident again. It no longer defined their connection. Rajiv respected that restraint. He understood now that dignity meant not reopening wounds unnecessarily. On anniversaries of the broadcast, Rajiv avoided commentary. He did not commemorate failure. He focused on continuity. The lesson lived in daily decisions. Rajiv's legacy became one of restraint, not spectacle. Younger journalists cited him as example of accountability without collapse. That recognition mattered. Rajiv accepted that mistakes did not disqualify integrity, avoidance of accountability did. He remained vigilant, aware that arrogance returns easily. The memory of that laughter remained, not as shame, but as reference. It reminded him of who he was, and who he chose to become. And choice, he learned, defined character more reliably than talent ever could. Long after the controversy faded from public memory, Rajiv encountered its echo unexpectedly. A young producer presented a segment mocking regional accents for humor. Rajiv intervened gently, explaining impact rather than forbidding content. The producer listened, reconsidered, and revised the piece. Rajiv recognized himself in that hesitation. He felt relief rather than frustration. Change, he realized, was generational. Rajiv continued advocating for responsible storytelling, emphasizing that satire required direction, not indiscriminate targets. He cited examples where humor exposed power, not vulnerability. These discussions reshaped editorial standards subtly. Rajiv observed improved workplace culture, fewer dismissive jokes, more inclusive dialogue. Progress remained imperfect, but intention shifted. Rajiv accepted that systemic change moved slowly, measured in habits, not declarations. He maintained humility, avoiding self-congratulation. When invited to speak at a media ethics forum, Rajiv declined spotlight, recommending Miguel instead. Miguel accepted, sharing practical frameworks for empathy training. Rajiv attended anonymously. Watching the audience engage thoughtfully affirmed the journey. Rajiv understood then that redemption did not require center stage. It required redistribution of attention. He returned home content, aware that growth often went unnoticed. That invisibility felt appropriate. The voices he once dismissed thrived without applause daily. Rajiv finally understood that leadership meant amplifying others quietly. The lesson endured, steady and demanding. He welcomed its weight. Rajiv's story circulated informally among journalism schools as discussion material. Students debated accountability, intention, and repair. Rajiv was occasionally invited to answer questions. He responded candidly, emphasizing listening over defense. He admitted discomfort, uncertainty, and ongoing effort. Students appreciated honesty more than resolution. Rajiv encouraged them to interrogate their assumptions early. He warned that platforms magnify blind spots faster than wisdom. These sessions felt meaningful. Rajiv realized his mistake became instructive beyond personal growth. He accepted that role with caution. He avoided portraying himself as redeemed hero. He framed himself as participant in learning. That distinction mattered. Meanwhile, Anna expanded training programs internationally, adapting frameworks for diverse cultures. Rajiv supported initiatives quietly through funding introductions. He avoided publicity. He believed good work required less narrative. Over time, Rajiv noticed language debates shifting online, more people challenging mockery collectively. Cultural sensitivity became expected rather than exceptional. Rajiv did not credit himself. He recognized broader societal movement. He felt grateful to have been redirected rather than discarded. The incident remained part of his identity, but not its entirety. Rajiv learned to live with contradiction, holding accountability without paralysis. That balance sustained him. When reflecting privately, he acknowledged that empathy demanded continuous practice. He recommitted daily, aware complacency invited regression. The lesson never ended. That permanence felt appropriate. In quiet moments, Rajiv considered how easily things could have ended differently. Cancellation, resentment, withdrawal. Instead, confrontation led to curiosity. That outcome required restraint from those harmed. Rajiv honored that generosity carefully. He avoided romanticizing forgiveness, understanding it was neither owed nor universal. He focused on responsibility. Rajiv maintained awareness that many lacked opportunity to recover publicly. That recognition humbled him. He advocated for proportional accountability rather than performative outrage. This perspective earned criticism, but he persisted. He believed justice required nuance. Rajiv's voice carried weight now, but he wielded it sparingly. He remembered how reckless confidence sounded. He chose deliberation. Over years, Rajiv's work gained international respect for balance and depth. Awards followed, though he accepted them cautiously. He dedicated one quietly to unseen workers globally. The gesture went unnoticed publicly, which pleased him. Rajiv valued alignment over acknowledgement. He continued mentoring, listening, learning. He remained open to correction. That openness became his defining trait. When reflecting on language, Rajiv no longer ranked accents. He valued intention and clarity. He understood communication as a collaborative act. That understanding reshaped his worldview entirely. The mockery incident faded into context. Its lesson remained central. Rajiv accepted that growth rarely announces itself. It accumulates through repeated choice. He committed to those choices consciously. Every day. Rajiv eventually reduced on-air appearances, transitioning into advisory roles. He welcomed the change, finding fulfillment in shaping discourse indirectly. Younger presenters carried conversations forward, informed by standards Rajiv helped establish. He watched with quiet pride. Occasionally, mistakes surfaced publicly. Rajiv advised patience, emphasizing correction over condemnation. He remembered how quickly judgment froze learning. Rajiv maintained correspondence with former critics, some becoming collaborators. Dialogue replaced division gradually. Rajiv understood this as progress. He continued reading messages from customer service professionals worldwide, staying grounded. These voices reminded him why empathy mattered. Rajiv never forgot the headset, the trembling caller, his initial failure. That memory grounded his restraint. He understood that expertise without compassion lacked legitimacy. Rajiv's influence extended beyond media, consulted by corporate trainers and educators. He insisted that empathy training required accountability, not slogans. He declined roles that sought branding without substance. Integrity guided his choices. When reflecting on his career, Rajiv identified that moment of mockery as inflection point. Without it, he might have remained shallowly successful. With it, he became intentionally effective. That distinction mattered. Rajiv accepted imperfection as ongoing condition. He committed to vigilance. The lesson remained alive, demanding humility daily. He welcomed that demand. Late in his career, Rajiv participated in a closed symposium on language and power. Scholars discussed accent discrimination, systemic bias, and labor economics. Rajiv listened more than he spoke. When invited, he shared experience succinctly, avoiding dramatization. He emphasized that change followed exposure, not intention. His contribution resonated. Participants appreciated lived perspective complementing theory. Rajiv felt satisfaction not from agreement, but engagement. He recognized that learning never concluded. He remained student indefinitely. Afterward, a young researcher thanked him for transparency. Rajiv replied that transparency was obligation, not virtue. That exchange reflected his evolution. Rajiv continued supporting initiatives promoting equitable communication standards. He measured success through behavior shifts, not applause. The public rarely associated him with the original incident anymore. Rajiv accepted that anonymity was appropriate. He did not seek legacy anchored in error. He preferred continuity anchored in practice. The lesson shaped his parenting as well, teaching children curiosity over mockery. He watched them navigate diverse environments with ease. That outcome mattered deeply. Rajiv understood that cultural respect required modeling. He remained vigilant against complacency. The world changed rapidly. He adapted intentionally. The mockery incident remained distant but instructive. Rajiv honored its lesson quietly. He continued forward, grounded in responsibility. When Rajiv eventually retired, colleagues organized a modest farewell. Speeches highlighted his evolution more than achievements. Rajiv appreciated that emphasis. He thanked those who challenged him hardest. He acknowledged Miguel and Anna publicly for the first time in years, without elaboration. The gesture felt complete. Rajiv withdrew from public life gradually, content with contribution. He continued writing privately, reflecting on communication ethics. These writings remained unpublished, intended for clarity rather than influence. Rajiv volunteered occasionally, teaching media literacy. He emphasized listening across difference. Students engaged enthusiastically. Rajiv felt fulfillment in simplicity. The incident that once threatened collapse now anchored perspective. He understood that respect required maintenance. He remained cautious of nostalgia. He believed growth demanded present attention. Rajiv accepted that mistakes never vanished. They transformed into reference points. He lived with that reality peacefully. The laughter from that broadcast no longer echoed painfully. It informed restraint. Rajiv embraced the quiet dignity of accountability sustained over time. He understood that empathy matured through repetition. He remained committed. The lesson endured, unremarkable yet profound. Rajiv accepted that his most meaningful work occurred after the spotlight dimmed. He valued that outcome deeply. The story of Rajiv Malhotra was never about downfall or redemption alone. It illustrated how casual mockery exposed hidden hierarchies, and how learning dismantled them deliberately. One careless moment illuminated labor, dignity, and empathy globally. Rajiv's journey reflected possibility rather than exception. Growth emerged not from outrage, but engagement. Filipino customer service professionals continued their work quietly, excellence sustained without recognition. Rajiv understood that leadership meant acknowledging unseen effort consistently. He carried that understanding forward. The lesson transcended language, emphasizing humanity. Rajiv accepted that accountability required endurance, not spectacle. He practiced it daily. The incident faded publicly, but its influence persisted privately. Rajiv lived accordingly. He recognized that respect was demonstrated through behavior, not apology alone. He honored that principle. The bridge once mocked became path walked deliberately.
Rajiv chose humility repeatedly.
That choice defined his legacy.